Hi everyone, Sane Man here. This video is brought to you by a donation from Artman, and here is what he has to say. Hi Sandman, thank you for your dedicated practice of diving deep into consciousness, extracting complex thoughts and then forging them in a language that is easily accessible for the enlightenment of others. Your work serves as a credit to humanity, and I consider you to be a psychonaut or someone who explores inner spaces. This brings me to my question. Do you partake in yoga, meditate, or partake in psychotropic substances, i.e. cannabis, psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, or other supplements for the benefit of accessing deeper levels of consciousness? I've been practicing yoga each day for the last several years now, and it's actually changed my life completely by conditioning me to let go of a number of attachments that were no longer serving me, including ones connected to my biological imperative. After viewing more than 100 of your videos and sharing about your struggles with health, I would be remiss if I didn't share that a dedicated yoga practice will add exponential quality to your life and well-being. The most important relationship that you will ever actually practice is the one that you have with yourself. Please take care of your whole self. Reach out to me if you actually want to learn yoga. I would be delighted to help you out. Cheers and namaste. Well, Artman, thanks for your donation as well as your questions. This video is going to be a lot less conventional than usual, and I'm going to discuss some very personal observations involving psychic phenomenon in my own life. It's interesting that you mentioned taking supplements that access deeper levels of consciousness. When I was 23 years old, I had a falling out with my parents because of the woman that I was with, so I moved in with her and I actually had the worst possible case of what I would describe as a panic state. For almost 2 days, I couldn't calm myself down, and my heart rate was out of control. I couldn't sleep and my emotional anguish was so high that I decided to head to the hospital. I spoke to the doctor and he gave me a tiny white pill called lorazepam, which is an anti-anxiety medication. It knocked me out for almost a day straight, but I actually slept for a very long time. When I woke up, there was actually a side effect. When I went to sleep after taking that pill, I woke up with the knowledge of how much money I was going to make the next day in my eBay and website businesses, to the exact penny. So I checked the computer and found out each exact amount each day. I didn't think anything of it and just chalked it up to a miraculous coincidence. Then a couple days after that, I went to sleep and had this horrible dream where I was walking around in a hangar wearing a lab coat and there were tons of burnt pieces of metal around me. I was holding one of them and was inside the hangar that had dark concrete floors with yellow lines like a grid pattern. I then woke up and had the same feeling that I felt 2 days before, and I knew that something had happened. I thought the dream was metaphorically telling me that there was something wrong with my business, and I had to correct it. So I looked over my stats and analytics and found nothing wrong. But I knew that something bad had happened, and I would describe the feeling as just knowing, but I can't really explain it. So I looked in the news and I saw the top story, which was the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster, and I knew immediately what it was. Debris from the space shuttle in the hangar. So I looked online to find pictures of the wreckage, and sure enough, I saw the same hangar that I had dreamt of the night before with all the debris. I was looking at the scene through what I would imagine were the eyes of someone in the hangar. My girlfriend's apartment was a tiny bachelor apartment, so that day we decided to look for a new place to live. I went to sleep and dreamt of seeing an awesome apartment, walking through it and seeing the basement. The next day I woke up and she showed me a bunch of apartment magazines filled with available places, and I pointed to the one that described the place that I had dreamt of, and I told her that's the apartment we're going to get. Again, I just knew it somehow, and she said that we'd probably have to look at dozens of places before we found a good one. The next day we looked for an apartment, and it was the one I actually saw in my dream, and we decided to take it. But something left me uneasy about taking it because I dreamt of a dead child nearby in the dream, which was really weird. A month after we moved in, a girl in our street, Holly Jones, was kidnapped and murdered on our street. That's when I made a promise to myself that if I ever saw enough of someone's death in a precognitive dream, that I would try and stop it. I told my ex-girlfriend about the apartment dream and about the dead kid before it happened. The day we heard about the kid, her face was as white as a piece of paper, and I kept freaking her out with each additional occurrence. A few months before that, I dreamt that I was actually a sniper killing an important man by shooting him dead. I woke up and I knew immediately that I would read that story and see it in the news, but before my computer booted up, my father called me on the phone and told me about the assassination. At first, it seems that my remote viewing or precognition occurred the exact time I was sleeping or within the next 12 to 48 hours. But over time, I started to see further and further ahead. My girlfriend started freaking out and didn't know how I was able to predict things because I would wake up next to her and tell her all about the details, and we would check out the stories together. There was shock and horror on her face each and every single time. I'm not sure why it started happening, but I know it started after taking the lorazepam or having extreme emotional anxiety. One thing that's clear is that I actually dreamt of things that I cared about a lot or had some level of emotional investment in them. I have a very ordered, analytical, and scientific mind and believe that the experiences I have had are not actually some sort of supernatural or spiritual occurrence, but are just levels of awareness or consciousness that we actually haven't had any good scientific explanations for. So after having 50 to 100 such experiences, I began classifying them and categorizing them, looking for patterns and trying to figure out what was triggering them and if I could actually start triggering them and controlling them on my own. I thought to myself that it would be incredible to start controlling what I was viewing and learn to guide it. I soon learned that to access a potential future, certain things had to be present. The most important was that I'd actually have to be emotionally connected to the events I saw, and the emotion had to be an unexpected surprise, otherwise it wouldn't work. Number 2, in that probable future, I had to be near a light source that was between 2500 and 3500 degrees Kelvin. Working in video and television, you learn about color temperature, and that was my key observation. Once I began learning about color temperature, I started carrying a portable tungsten light connected to lithium-ion batteries. Whenever I feel extremely emotionally overwhelmed by something, I turn the light on, and as a result, I've actually had an increased number of precognitive dreams. I figure out a way to send back positive and negative experiences back to myself in dreams, and as a result of that, I actually started getting dozens, if not hundreds of them. But the problem is I wish there was some way to replicate the emotional effects somehow so I can simulate my emotional state, and thus be able to access the future at any point. I've been able to sense short sequences of numbers this way, usually no more than 4 of them. My goal has always been to bring back the lottery numbers, not playing them but to actually show them to a friend to prove my ability and piss him off by basically choosing not to play and win. So at this point you probably understand why I call myself the Sandman, because of these dreams that I always have. On my 3rd attempt to save someone's life using my precognitions, I accomplished it and saved someone close to me. But I had to live roughly 6 months to a year with regards to anxiety and not knowing what was going to happen and if I had the ability to stop it or not. Also, the 3rd variable in precognition seems to be water. Usually, but not always, there's often a large body of water involved. So 3 key elements: emotionally charged state, 3000 degrees Kelvin, give or take 500 degrees, and basically water. I look at this from a scientific point of view and I don't see it as some sort of mystical spiritual thing, but something with a scientific explanation that I haven't figured out yet. I don't care about what people think about my story and if they think I'm crazy. I just know that a good scientist looks for ways to replicate his findings and shares them with others. But if I accomplish what I set out to do and I share my findings with the world, it could actually throw everything into chaos. You see, the worst thing about these precognitions that I've had is that simply by dreaming the future events, you actually change the events because of something I can only describe as the observer effect. Once you saw something happening to you that was horrible or negative, and you could actually avoid it, you probably would. Simply by observing it means that you find yourself living it a second time in a real life versus just dreaming it, and you will behave absolutely differently. I was recently watching a film called Arrival, and it discusses this question, and if you could see your future and it was negative, would you still choose to experience it? Warning, there are actually mild spoilers ahead. If you see your future, you alter it by simply observing it. So how does this relate to women, you ask? Well, you see, the relationships I was supposed to be in at this point in my life, I eventually met one particular woman in question in real life and dreamed of my life with her having kids before and after. I saw myself cheating on my partner in the dream when I was 30 years old, and to be with the person that I dreamt of later, and she would eventually cheat on me with a much younger guy, and I was completely devastated. I guess what goes around comes around. Seeing that meant that I could also alter things, and I did. Perhaps this is where we get into multiverse theory, where I was potentially seeing other universes where I'd made different choices. Perhaps when we die, our life reboots and we can pretty much access some of the experiences, sort of like living Groundhog Life instead of Groundhog Day. Call me crazy if you want, but as you mentioned, Artman, I'm a psychonaut and can tell you there's nothing weirder and no weirder feeling than dreaming something and then watching it unfold right in front of you. Again, I might sound crazy, but I knew the circumstances of my friend's death, and it changed the course of his history and saved his life. My major girlfriend of 10 years slipped past this so-called psychic radar because I told her how it works, so she never really rocked the emotional boat. She was a perfect chameleon as well because she was basically trying to predict what I would do next in my life by getting to know me, watching the patterns, and then pretending to predict the future and get my actions right about 80% of the time. It was very smart on her part and brought me closer to her because I thought that she had the same ability. This was the most weasel-like move that she ever pulled. Eventually I started accessing what I could only assume to be past and future lives. If in the past or the future I was near tungsten light or a sunrise or sunset at 2500 degrees in light temperature, I got glimpses from those lives. My past life personalities also somehow figured out their past lives and moved and lived in the exact same places, visited those places during their lives. My guess is that at least one of them figured out this ability as well in the past and used it to change the world with his crude understanding of this reality, but that's a topic for another day. Also, candles, open flames, and fire didn't really seem to work for precognitive moments. Only sunsets at 2500 degrees, street lamps at 2900 degrees, and tungsten lights indoors roughly 3200 degrees. If I'm under them and really emotional, then the experience somehow travels to my dreams. And I only see this in the dreams, not in any other state. Precognitive dreams also have a different quality to them. My most recent experience was in downtown Las Vegas surrounded by tons of incandescent light bulbs near Las Vegas Creek, when someone was about to mug me. Luckily, I changed the outcome, but the circumstances were the same. But again, another story for another day. Hopefully people aren't going to say that Sandman made a crazy video like Monks of MGTOW or Vagina Monsters yet again. I don't really care because this is all part of my self-actualization process, and it's also helped me from having a kid right now. And if I did have a kid, it would get taken away by the mother, and I would actually have to spend the rest of my life trying to undo the damage from a single mother that left me for a 25-year-old guy that reminds me of a boxer like Mike Tyson, with more muscles than brains. Anyways, that's it for today. Artman, I tried hot yoga and I didn't like it. I also took part in a couple of days of Buddhist meditation in the mountains of Australia, and that was a really amazing experience. I can feel the energy when I enter in churches as well, when people are praying, which is also really weird. But I still don't believe in God. Also, please don't forget to like this video and check out the MGTOW mystery link. As for everyone else out there, please follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook to get tomorrow's video today. Thanks for taking your daily dose of red pills. And remember, a red pill a day keeps the blue pill future nightmares away. So enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.